Super
Yeah.
curious. This is a thing we used to do back in the day for early Tradecraft Tuesday. We used to turn on the waiting room about, gosh, what was that? 5 minutes early or something. And we'd always have the
Yeah.
banter. And then we'd have to get
Yeah.
straight faced when we hit the top of the hour. So, Chris, while we're waiting, technically we're there. I still see the room is just filling up with attendees. That's awesome. Obviously, appreciate everybody joining us. Curious, dude. I've been going down a rabbit hole lately. Not quite YouTube. I've been able to keep my social media like in check, but I will say that a little bit of like getting sucked into binge watching. Have you seen that Friends and Neighbors TV show yet? It's like that.
No, but I heard it's good. Is it good?
It was making me think if we ever like, is there a hacker version of Friends and Neighbors where like, we lose our job here at Huntress and we just go straight up shady mode? I don't know. I don't know about stealing people's watches and stuff along those lines.
Right.
That
I
was
was gonna
kind of
say because they like
ridiculous.
steal stuff, right?
Yes,
They're
they
like
do.
burglars or something.
It is. It's essentially, I don't want to spoil too much for anybody who hasn't seen it, but yeah, exactly. It's like a Wall Street banker, hedge fund guy that all of a sudden not only like gets divorced, loses his job, and starts more or less petty theft from his rich friends, and it goes deep. So,
Wait, oh, he steals from his friends?
oh yeah, like his friends, his neighbors, we're
Oh
talking it's
shit.
high-end watches. I'm curious, anybody else watching any ridiculous shows or binging anything lately? Well, before we get started? I see the chat's already lightened up. What's going on, Sam? Ramon, Kevin. Uh-oh, Tribe 9. I haven't seen that one yet. Have you seen that one, Chris?
Mm-mm. No, my wife just told me yesterday we got to get back to we got to finish the Handmaid's Tale. We like started that, watched a bunch of seasons, and then they kind of had like a break between some, and we fell off the bandwagon there.
Yeah, I get it. I see John Hammond videos, bless you. Although I did watch the other day, John did a collab with some of the scammer takedown ones. Those are freaking amazing. I mean, all John's videos
Those
are
are always
amazing.
good. Those are always fun.
Yeah. Man, the amount of like just content on here that I haven't even heard of. Zero Day, there's another hacker. I've
Is
seen,
that
yeah,
a isn't that a book? That's a book, right?
there's a ton of it. So, well, I'm glad to hear that some of us are, we might not be getting off the couch, but we're at least doing something other than just, gosh, I got sucked in deep to all I was reading was like, when kind of X fell over and we got more like
Yeah.
content, I for some reason got really hung up on just like Ukrainian war. So, glad to see some of us are doing something more creative than just news and hacker tradecraft. With that said, I think it's about time we kick off Product Lab. So glad to see everybody's using chat. Only a handful of people have forgot. Please flip your, option if you are live chat on the Zoom version of it. Flip that sucker over to everyone because we have had a handful of people already write to the host and panelists, and only Chris and I can see that. So keep that in mind. With it said, we've got a lot of questions in regards to, are we ever going to do an AI episode? Chris and I come from a bit of background that's deep in data science, computer science, things along those lines. So it seemed appropriate, Chris, for me to kick off the, kind of summer. At least to me, it feels very much like summer because it went from 70 to like 90 some degrees here in Florida already. And I'm getting it going with an episode on autonomous operations. So I don't know how much you saw. Obviously, I saw you throwing in content, but anybody who missed the agenda, we're kind of starting to play a little bit. We've always had a couple sections on Product Lab, right? Straight out of the lab is just an update of all the different R&D. And to be honest, some episodes we've gone a whole episode of Product Lab only talking about R&D.
Yeah.
So Chris Lenos and I, right? Lenos is some of the producer behind the scenes decided let's slice this up a little bit. And so we've got some feedback. And folks of you, we're going to give an email address later here on if you want to give us feedback on what you want to see the show. But we've been suggested do some rotating sessions. So we're going to have a hot topic today, really talking a little bit about automation and SOC response. I'm going to give you all a little bit of background, kind of the 3 times I've failed now at getting people to embrace more fully automated remediations. I'm going to get some feedback from the audience. Chris is going to talk a little bit about some unreleased R&D. So specifically some, LLM assistance for sim searching. And then very frankly, we've got a wonderful message that came in from Sam, alternate man himself from Closed AI, that mentioned he wants to know how we feel about AI itself, ending with a demo that we're pretty excited to show you all. It's a way to be able to actually kick and feel some of the product, and we want your feedback. Does that work for you, Chris, in this order?
Yeah, no, yeah, I think these, like Kyle said, we're going to try out some new kind of way to do the show here with a couple of segments. You'll see them; they'll come back. We'll have different segments, but it'll kind of allows us to break up the show and try out different things.
Sounds good. And it looks like the chat is already roasting me for whining over my 90-degree weather while others are in 100-degree Fahrenheit. So that is a good topic. Let's keep it hot and let's keep it spicy. Chris, you want to cover out of the lab? I know we're cooking some
Yeah.
stuff. More and more, I won't lie, these icons are starting to look less like Breaking Bad and more like, I don't know, my 20-year-old son. So I'm going to keep it going here, but tell me what we're cooking.
Yeah, so we've done manage antivirus on Windows for a long time, managing Defender that's built into Windows, all that kind of stuff. What Apple released not too long ago is something called XProtect. And basically, XProtect is a built-in antivirus. Apple manages it, they update it, they add rules to it. It's not super advanced. It's mostly signature-based detections. But you don't have to do anything to it. It's free. And if it ever detects anything that's malicious, it will just immediately move that application to the trash. And so, like, it's cool. We might as well start to integrate with it. So we're not doing a fully managed version of it. There really isn't too much to manage there. There's really no settings you can get, but we're looking at what are the things that it's detecting, and so we're really monitoring it. And the thing that really surprised me was we've already seen 23 unique threats. And you can see them here on the slide.
It's impossible,
A bunch of
Chris.
really
Macs
interesting
don't
stuff.
get malware. That's not
Right.
possible.
No, I don't. Of course not. That's what people would like to think. If that were true, I don't think Apple would have wasted time building X Protect. So there you go.
Pretty interesting though. I really what caught me off guard, especially in some of the first conversation I've had from like our partner base and our customer base has been, hey, look, I didn't realize I should be taking credit for some of the security posture, whether it's coming from the operating system or not, whether you're doing your QBRs, right, with your actual end customers, or you're doing like monthly business review, if you're like IT director reporting to CISO, being able to take credit for what you do each month is something that's like an oddly hard thing. I think a lot of us geeks haven't really quite mastered, how to talk to non-technical or less technical audiences. And so our goal is never to expose you with a bunch of like nobody's going to know what a bundler is, right? I mean, other than this group. But bottom line, the point that I'm getting at is there's quite a bit of some of this that we actually think it's fairly important for folks to be able to say, look, every single month when you're productive and your stuff is running the way that you're happy, whether it's filing taxes or delivering, a product, whatever you do, it's done that way because we've helped keep you protected. And whether it's the Mac doing it, and let's be real, part of it is keeping some of these technologies up to date and turned on. Our goal is to start exposing more of this in less technical terms in those like monthly and quarterly like business review reports we hook up for all you guys. So giving you a heads up, this is some of the coolness we're coming from. And if you notice, there is some of this stuff where even the same family actually is it impacting, root user, right? Unprivileged users, etc. There's a lot going on here. And so just keep an eye out. This is straight out of the lab. There will be more iteration, right? We're not done. All right, Chris.
Yep.
ITDR, I think the big one for me I saw was GCC high. I know there's folks on all kinds of different journeys, whether it's the good old fashioned like CMMC, other folks just have other regulations and requirements. The one thing we're excited is it took us a little bit of work. Some of things are actually quite different when it comes to the APIs Microsoft exposes, and other things obviously have to do with the way we protect certain data. So notice the support for GCC high is available, and things that I wanted to share from the Product Lab episodes in the past. We heard from you, those of you who went to feedback.huntress.com and actually upvoted. The one that we saw disproportionate for our ITDR, the identity protection, platform for Microsoft 365 was, hey, can you exclude student licenses? And that's something that we took a look back and forth and yes, made that very simple. So look, even if your tenant has both faculty and student, we're trying to make sure that we're only billing for the appropriate stuff. And it doesn't mean we don't protect different things. And so I would just highly encourage, again, digging into this. If you have any sort of schools, especially public school systems where maybe they're all running over top of Microsoft 365, keep in mind we're still working through the Google Workspace capability. We're hoping sometime in Q3, maybe into Q4, depending on how close we stick to timelines, we'll be opening the first versions of ITDR up for the Google Workspace side. So really excited to keep that going. So, and Chris, I saw you in chat just saying thanks for getting it out. Like, big thanks for you all for voting on these things. Crazy. We actually listen. So, Chris, did you have anything? I know account manager is always the great place. They like to keep in touch.
Yep.
And this is even better. Like, there is no extra cost for these things, folks. So, like, if you're not working with your team, even getting early access to beta, like, keep in regular contact with your account manager. They can give you all kinds of like early hookups.
Yeah, exactly.
I know EDR, Chris. This one was cool. Do you want to take the EDR one? You want to talk about SIM? I know you're
Yeah.
doing some of the demo later, so up to you.
Yeah, I can talk about this a little bit. We've been spending a decent amount of time recently on the EDR team trying to figure out how we better identify lateral movement. When attackers are trying to move from one machine to another, and how do we kind of detect it before bad stuff happens, right? Or as quickly as we can after they've moved from one machine to another. So you can see here, like we've got detections where we're looking for people logging in from machines that we know are malicious based on their name, which is kind of cool because whenever you provision a new Windows workstation, it gets a random name. The nice part about that is when we see that random name across many different machines or many different accounts, it's nice because it's fairly unique. So we can see that attacker doing stuff. We can then block them in the future. We're also looking at things like PS exec via a remote logon from an IP address within the network. Not super common. It could be an admin, but like in this case, when you see them doing that and then creating shadow copies and stuff like that, that might not be something that is very good there. And you can see down here on the bottom, we actually caught this lateral movement within 10 minutes. So very cool stuff here. Super happy with all the great stuff that's coming out of the EDR team recently.
Yeah, I'm glad to see, EDR, there's just such a big trend kind of externally that, hey, look, just because identity is where a lot of the hot new tradecraft is happening, doesn't mean there isn't underrepresented and under essentially valued EDR telemetry. For those of you not tracking from past episodes, we talk a lot about what 20% of data actually yields 80% of the value. And the one thing about EDR, which is a very mature product, we've had 8 years or 10 years of building that thing now. The point that I'm getting at is sometimes it's just little things. If we've been tracking something as simple as like where threat actors come from on their host name, we did this initially and built this out for SIM and realized that a lot of times when people brute force still, whether it's RDP or other technologies, they'll actually have a list of what computer names they come from. Sometimes the name is something egregious like Callie. Other times it's actually very unique. But the thing about being very unique means it also stands out like a sore thumb. And we learned that with the success we had on SIM, we could go and actually use that R&D and build some of the same tables that we use to find malicious threat actors. I recently, I think Akira team has got caught up with some of their weak tradecraft. Hopefully they don't watch this sucker. And we've been able to kind of exploit the fact that they made their own OPSEC mistakes using some of these same names and funneled this back into the lateral movement detection that we've seen coming in from external private IPs. So again, really exciting to see multiple products building from the same R&D. And Chris, I think actually some of these miscellaneous updates are very similar, right? They're not maybe as
Yep.
sexy as like, look, it's fancy tradecraft, but notice the same API, right? Providing metrics. We're now trying to be able to we had certain things for our monthly, quarterly reports that some of these actually were like different products. They were kind of disparate, maybe not even APIs, but under the hood calls, and we didn't have some of the perfect standards of metrics depending on how we were measuring different things in different reports. So these are things, by the way, multiple products are benefiting from some of those same changes. You'll notice the same thing too for, auto task PSA now includes sat and sim details. So these are minor basic things, but good example of as we've moved from like the yesterday of being a one product company to a proper unified platform. These are some of the tech debt that we've run into. And Chris, do you know more about this one? Like I read this one, but I wasn't 100% sure. Do you know what this one's talking about?
Yeah, so initially, the security awareness training, we had a button in the Outlook ribbon bar where you could, click it to report phishing. A lot of people don't like that new UI from Microsoft, and so they actually use Outlook Classic, or you don't have the ribbon bar on mobile or in some of the web stuff. And so it wasn't there. So the team has actually gone and added it to make sure whether you're in the newest UI or whether you're using Classic, the button for reporting phishing will still always be there. So just making sure that we're continuing to cover all the bases there with end users.
Nice, nice. So, Chris, I got some hot topic info watching it. Our whole thing about having these multiple segments, right, is to keep it going. And the number one thing is I asked both internal and external. Folks were asking me about what are we going to do? Agentic AI is everywhere. You mind if I kind of give a little bit of tangent? Because I did a bit of a history lesson to set this one up,
Yeah,
but I'm
let's
not
do
going to
it.
go long, right? So for those of you that remember way back in the day, there was a family of malware called Emotet. It doesn't actually feel like it was been 6 years, but it has. It's been over 6 years. And this really wrecked a lot of the I would call it from probably small enterprise all the way down to small SMBs, because the reason is a lot of those organizations don't use a lot of internal segmentation, right? They're not using whether it's logical or physical segmentation. And Emotet was taking advantage at the time that when they got in and whether they got access to like an admin level password or they were just using the session token and moving laterally from like not even a domain admin, but just a user that had privileges on multiple boxes, it would spread like wildfire. And we saw some nasty cases when this was happening where sometimes it would take 3 days and other times maybe 3 months to be able to help get some of this constant lateral moving software. And this was a moment that we kind of knew that since malware had always like had some worming way before 2019, but this is the first time we saw worming used just so egregious, right? And let's be real, there was plenty of examples of like, even ransomware that had wormed before this, right? WannaCry had worming aspects. But the thing about Emotet, it was also at the same time living off the land. So it was using a lot of built-in applications that you couldn't just play whack-a-mole with antivirus. And you notice I started talking about synchronized removal all the way back in 2019. And what came of this is we tried to push our client base to consider using fully automated remediation. Let's let Huntress not necessarily become an antivirus, but when we are able to do things, for instance, not just like preventative. So think about like post isolation. That has always been our team doesn't need approval to help isolate your network or take those. But we wanted to be more part of the remediation process. And in 2019, we did customer feedback and surveys and got across the board feedback of like, no, I want to be part of that decision in remediation. And so you can see we ended up by the end of 2019. So if you follow in the timeline, right? February of 2019, we rolled this out in action. And actually, we're able to write some pretty neat case studies about assisted remediation and more or less one single magic button. If any of you have been with us for that long, you probably remember, right? Back in 2019, we would deliver you this beautiful remediation plan. It's the very similar remediation plan that you get today, whether it's on the SIM, SAT, right? I guess they don't quite have a remediation plan, but we're getting there. But very much in the EDR and ITDR space, you get these plans. And again, you can approve the darn things. And what was beautiful is in 2019, we were seeing this not only create a lot of incidents, maybe even some of them where the virus itself had been mostly removed, right? But the actual persistence mechanism, those are often called artifacts that lay around and sometimes create support tickets when somebody stumbles onto like a randomly named error that says it can't find a file in a certain directory. And we did. We rolled out assisted remediations and we're able to like quickly remediate all these different online hosts within a handful of minutes. It was a big win. Now, the part that I want to ask you all as our audience is you could probably call out that there's some gaps here, right? We know that reality kicks in. From our endpoint, it sends telemetry to the back end. Huntress then creates our incident report, whether it's fancy algorithms, humans. We send you all, an incident to your ticketing system, whether it's a fancy PSA, maybe it's old school email, whatever you decide to use. And theoretically, what happens is from your PSA or wherever you get it done, you can go and say, hey, I want to tell the Huntress back end run this remediation for me. But what we learned is not everybody was taking advantage of assisted remediations. And that, by the way, was all the way into 2021 or so. And then what happened is not as many people were actually running remediations. So we tried again in 2022. And if you notice on my actual, like giving anybody history, and maybe take a screenshot if you're interested in like how we do some of our platform and go to market vision, I wrote about this, that automated response actions and orchestration, still with minimal kind of partner and customer interaction, is really needed. It's needed because there's staffing and experience gaps. And we got shot down pretty hard, right? Reality didn't really change, the same exact thing. But now what's exciting is agentic AI conversations have really shifted people's mindset. And we're at the level that where Chris and I want to have a little bit of the conversation with you all is we believe that what is truly needed now that people are becoming more willing to allow some automated remediation, there's probably some room for maybe some fancy rules and some orchestration engine. But before we get there, I want to start it out with a quick poll. So humor me just for a second. Lenos, if you can cue it up, let's kick a poll. I'm curious. Today is what, May 22nd of 2025. When would you actually allow your managed security team to take fully automated remediation actions? These aren't the isolation and prevention. We know the market is okay with this, but I'm super curious. Is it at any time? Is it do it every time? Is it only like maybe on when you're on vacation or after hours? Or is it still like, nah, that's my job. I'm there to remediate. Don't steal my job from me. I'm super curious how the audience feels about this. And I love the fact that the chat, by the way, if you have any thoughts, this is where you can light me up in chat. If there's something in here, like Kevin already said, like, whoa, this really depends on the client, in my honest opinion, right? And I agree. Some clients, you're like, whoa, if I take that network down, we are going to have big problems. And others of you are actually, it's Perry as well saying, well, yeah, to be honest, I just need the option. Can I have the option? Maybe sometimes it's automated. Maybe sometimes it's this assisted. And what I really enjoy, right? Matt's even calling this out as like, wait, isn't that what I pay you for? What I love is, yes, these are all really good questions. And I see the chat is lighting it up, even like, wait, are you reviewing these remediations? If so, I do trust you all. And so, anyways, I'm going to give just a couple more seconds, and then I'm going to, like, your feedback, by the way, is quite literally going to shape how we're going to implement this. But we've got some thoughts. I just don't want to taint the audience. And considering how many of you's live today, yeah, Aaron saying, "Hey, would there be an abort or undo mechanism?" That's a pretty good one, right? Hey, look, you accidentally blew away my backups. Are you going to have those files? That's a good question, right? And undo is sometimes very costly. Others, I love some people asking, saying, hey, lock it all down and ask for forgiveness later. I mean, that's all good till darn. I mean, we've even seen in some of our earlier days when we did host isolation, I think we killed a domain controller with some of the DNS rules and ended up like really breaking just because the isolation of DCs. We all know we have to be careful, but even just subtle nuances of finding out what order we put some of the rules to, limit network traffic. All right. It seems like we've got a good amount. Chris, I'm going to stop the screen share real quick before I do it. I'm curious. Poll Master, can you show us some of the results? How do people feel about this stuff? I know, again, we gave only 3 of them, but look at that. This is a good example of 2025 being very different than 2023. For those that are just watching this in not part of the Zoom environment, if you're watching like on YouTube or LinkedIn Live or whatever those are, 79% of the audience that voted said, look, anytime I got bigger problems if I don't trust my managed security team. Some folks, 16% said after hours on a set schedule. And what's exciting, only 4% of this voting audience said, hey, look, hell no. Chris, this is super different. Remember when we first
Yeah.
asked this? I mean, we got like
Yeah.
trolled out of the room, did we not? Like it was really
Yeah, I
rough.
mean, very much people had very strong opinions about like, hey, I manage the relationship, I'm the IT person, I need to be involved, don't do anything that could get me in trouble. But Yeah, it's interesting. And obviously, when we built there all of those were considerations. How do we do this in a way where we are really sure we're doing the right thing? It's not going to cause problems, like all of that kind of stuff. And so we'll continue to go down that path, I think.
So for the team, just keeping track of time, Chris, before we move to some of the next segment here, the agentic conversation is spicy. And I'm purposely not going to open some of that now because I don't want to run away from some of our open-ended, kind of mailroom question we got earlier. But we, as at a recent offsite, so it was my product leader, my CTO, Chris, right, and myself, I think also we had our CISO was at this meeting as well. We were taking a step back and just saying, regardless of whatever abstracted product, right, there could be 30 products over here. The idea is there's a uniform platform, and we've been coming up with and doing a lot of testing, for instance, of creating a bit of a rules engine. So the feedback we've got from you all in the past has been if you're going to create rules or policies that a lot of folks call it, you just got to make sure inheritance works correctly. It's intuitive. Like I want to set this at the top level account setting. However, I need to be able to override this on these handful of maybe organizations like an M365 tenant, or maybe a handful of these data sources on a SIM product, or, more realistically, hey, look, I've got these end users. Don't mess with them the same way because they're developers. They're going to be running their own software. Be a little bit lighter on them so you don't, slow down their build process. And the reason that I'm calling that out is we think that's a big part of a rules engine. We think a proper working system should not only allow you the granularity, but we think the right answer from your feedback is, Huntress, could you come up with a strong best practices recommendation? Whether that's looking at NIST or looking at, CIS, whatever benchmark or standard, maybe even help me understand what you map to. But most importantly, can you all have an opinion? And so we've taken that feedback and we're working that right now of what we think some of these best practices are. And our goal is not to create you more work, by the way. Our goal is to give you enough flexibility that if you want to get into the nerd knobs, you can. But I think at least what I want in a product, I want my shit to just work out of the box. I don't want to go in there and maybe have to make occasional exceptions. I also am, I think the thing that annoys me most, Chris, is when I put all my time and effort to setting something up. And then either I have a new teammate or I have something new triggers. And then the person comes to me and says, can you explain something you've already made the decision? So Chris, I know right now we do, like, for instance, when we're either doing triages or investigations, we might not know, like, hey, is this a Terra RMM agent allowed on that endpoint? And we sometimes have to ask a question that has maybe a handful of answers. The thing that we want to share with you all is we believe in the R&D now that we're seeing much more of the audience represent our own individual feedback that we've done as well. We believe that we should start storing a lot of your answers, that when you have them, of course, store them as rules that can supersede. That means we're going to look at expanding our escalations to give you more flexibility. So you can say, like, no, I only want to allow this on this one user or this one organization or my entire account. That way, when you set these settings, the basis of a strong rules engine, the way that we believe it is, it powers a lot of our orchestration engine. And Chris, to be very frank, the first version of the orchestration we built was for us, right? You and Jonathan Molieri at the time was our chief architect, and he built out an entire orchestration engine for our SOC to not have to remember these rules. But I think the idea, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, it's to be able to take these actions. So when we have an incident report and we click send, if the rules are already set, we can take action as soon as that's going out the door. Is that the plan?
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? It's how do we set up automated actions based on what we've seen, things that are happening, approvals that we've got in the past, right? If somebody says, "Hey, yeah, we don't do anything with a Terra here," anytime you see it, that's bad, right? Like, how do we start to automate more of those things?
So, team, for those of you who said depends, but maybe 90% for sure, we think some of these rules might need to have conditions. Like, think about not heavy, like, allow me to do anything, but think about very simple, maybe even if this, then that type logic that allows you to say, like, hey, for this type of client, if it's after 6 p.m., do your thing. But for everybody else, I want to own it. Or maybe it's vice versa. I allow you to do it for all of these. But for this particular client, escalate it to me and don't take automated remediation. We think that's a big part of where not only are the rules engines, for instance, logic and settings and policies, but it's also when does this make sense? So think about timing. Some of you, I think it was Sam, chimed up, and it was from one of our earlier episodes. Sam chimed up and called out like a timer mechanism. What if we send you this escalation or even this incident report and a certain amount of like a threshold goes by? So we actually think that's going to be a big part, not just the window of like what time or under what circumstance or maybe what level of criticality, but how much time elapses that allows us to be able to do these things. And I will say one of the biggest things that we're a little bit worried about is we've seen some pretty big incidents go down when we have not had a client or a partner take fast enough action. And so this is where we're really inclined to push the default Huntress standards. If any of you have thoughts on what you think, like I'm watching the chat and Matt, you're throwing good, giving validation of like, I like that timer idea. If you all have some recommendations on what you think are best practices, we've got kind of some of our own guesses, but this is why this like product lab isn't a product pitch. It's a real feedback session. So especially if you all have like, I heard you loud and clear. Seems like a lot of folks are like, generally, I've got a good policy in mind. I think I know some exceptions that I would want to make them. But if you come up with any other things that you also think we're missing on this orchestration engine or rules engine that's outside of maybe the default timer, maybe even in some clients, you're like, hey, I want to strengthen that default timer. This is the type of input that if we get this stuff wrong, well, then it's going to take us a long time to go unwind these things. But if we start building these iteratively, our goal is to start exposing some of these, like maybe in the most critical places first. Like if an incident is critical or high, maybe you want to do different logic than if it was low. That's the type of stuff that we want to learn a little bit more. So, Chris, before I move on, we're right at a good point to be able to transition. Do you have any other things that you think you'd want to get? Because these notes in here are pretty darn good. Like Tim Jackson threw out, said, hey, maybe an option to set the time at like our ultimate account MSP level, but allow it to override on certain clients. That to me is a no-brainer. I think that is 100% something that we should support. Do you have anything else, Chris,
Yeah.
that you want to maybe ask the team for feedback, considering like you kind of are like our CTO and you're going to help your team of architects implement this correctly?
No, I mean, I think all of this makes sense. I think, like you said, we've seen a bit of a shift. I think people are more comfortable with kind of our track record and saying, hey, if you think it's bad, like take action, do it. So I think that's really good. I think it shows that, we've been pretty consistent for a long time now. So, I like the timer idea. I think some of these is just like, let's get it in there, let's try it out, see how it goes. We've got humans on the other end of it. So they're going to make that judgment call to say, hey, is this like if I isolate this host, is that going to be bad? We always have that benefit versus like other vendors who might just be having some AI or some automation doing something. There's no human there to apply that judgment call.
Oh man, Chris, I got myself slightly distracted, but it looks like we've got good feedback. I don't know if you noticed, Chris, I'll stop a screen share, but Kevin called out and said, hey, I heard you guys squashed a bug in Microsoft, specifically 365, that was causing a lot of like the ITDR reports to be like sometimes very delayed. You want to go off cuff for 1 second before I move to the next one and give the
Yeah,
team a heads
yeah,
up? I
that
mean, this
was
this is feedback again from Product Lab that actually helped a Microsoft-wide problem. You got 2 minutes to give us the
yeah.
rundown?
Yeah, so we do a lot here around observability. So we use Datadog for observability within our platform of what's happening and where are the bugs and how long are different actions taking, all of that, right? That's how we track things like our MTTR. How long do we respond? Our MTD, how long does it take us to detect something? We also track a bunch of other stuff, especially when it comes to external things. So for a long time, we'd been tracking what was the timeline between when an event actually happened within Microsoft 365 and how long did it take for us to receive it. And for a long time, this was really consistent up until about middle of February. It was consistent at roughly around 10 minutes. And then suddenly we saw it just going crazy. And it would, would have these wild swings where sometimes it would be 2 days before we would get the event, or sometimes the events would be replayed 2 days later, or it'd be multiple hours. And it would, go up and down. Sometimes on the weekends it would be slow, but then by Wednesday we were back to like, a handful of minutes. And so it went back and forth. And through our like continuing close partnership with Microsoft, we talked with them, and they eventually, got us to the team in India who actually manages the infrastructure and manages this whole application. We talked with them, gave them some of our feedback. They looked into it and said, "Oh yeah, we got this problem and that problem, but we can fix this." And they did. And now we see the time back to a very consistent less than 10 minutes. So that was not just a win for us. It was really like you said, a win for everybody. And
And Chris, that was
just
anybody
happy
who
that we got
had
that
what?
partnership.
That's anybody who had what, like P1 licensing only, right? If you had like the P2, E3, E5, and were doing your own,
Anybody less than P1. So if you were less than P1, if you had like business standard or something like that, and you didn't have enterprise or intra P1, you couldn't call the Graph API to get the events. You couldn't export the events from wherever, but you could get them from the management API, and the management API was having performance problems.
wild, wild. All right, dude, I'm gonna keep it going because the poll time was a lot of votes. I really appreciate everybody just like actively participating. That's why, again, you YouTube LinkedIners, if you're out there, like you should really join us in Zoom. That's where the cool kids hang. Got some thoughts though, Chris. Unreleased.
Yeah.
We know we're working. We know SIM searches
Unreleased.
are a pain. Do you want to introduce this because this is your baby?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is something we've been noodling on for a while. We haven't really started this yet, but it kind of fit with the theme. We wanted to talk about it. We're always trying to give you some behind the scenes. So that's what this segment is really all about. Unreleased is like the stuff that's not out yet. What's cooking? Um, so SIM is super cool. We've got this syntax ESQL where you can search for different things, and it's really powerful. You can add a bunch of conditionals, show me logs that have this thing but not that thing, or where this field has one of these three values, and then you can specify which fields you want to see in the output so that you can quickly get to the information you need, right? Very cool. But for somebody who's not in that every day, it can be very daunting to then figure out what is it that I need to do to get the data I need to see, right? They can generally tell you, I need to see this, but I don't know how to write an ESQL query for that. What we are going to try, and what we'll see, and I've played around with it a little bit, is actually using AI for this. So if you jump to the next slide, I got some examples here of, instead of having to figure out the ESQL, could you just say like, hey, what host has Bob logged into in the last month? And can the AI then just generate that and say, oh, I know you gave me Bob's email. I need to use the field user.email. I need to compare it to Bob's email address. Maybe I want to add this in or remove that event, right? How do we take that natural language question and turn it into the query, right? And so that's something that we are thinking about, we think is going to be interesting, right? But I pose this as a question of, is AI to the rescue? And when you think about this, then that brings up many other questions. If you go to the next slide, I detailed some of these here.
So, Chris, I'm super curious of like, obviously, some folks even asking the experience, right? This is a good
Yeah.
example to me of where I think AI is appropriate, right? Hey, help me or augment me and what I want to do. And even if I know how to go and read, my own insert QL, whatever query that you're going to actually do, um, do I really want to remember it though? I've got 10,000 things to do. I've got all kinds of
Yeah,
other
no, you
products.
probably
I
don't.
generally think, even though I can, I don't think I want to at this stage. I don't know if it's just gray hair kicking in or if it's just there's so much other stuff for me to do. Like if I live in it, yeah, I love to flex. Got it. Right. But on your
Yeah.
end, what have your results been so far? We've seen, at least some of the chatbot type stuff. I know you've tinkered with this a lot. You're tinkering
Yeah.
with even some of the MCP stuff. Are we talking about that in this one? I don't remember.
Yeah, we'll get to it. If you want to jump to the next slide, oh, where'd that slide go?
Oh,
There's
did
supposed to
I?
be another
I might
slide.
have got you out of order. So give me one second and see if you might be able to blame me when I was moving. This one?
Oh yeah, maybe the slides got moved around. Yeah, yeah. So, like as I was thinking through this, okay, what would this look like? How would it work? Right? Some of the things that I came up with were like, well, what happens if I don't know ESQL? I ask AI and it generates a query that's then invalid. Now what? Right? Like what are as an end user, my user experience is now not great because I didn't know, AI doesn't know. We're both now confused. We don't know what to do, where to go from there. I also thought about like, well, what happens if it's a valid query, but I don't see any of the data? I see nothing. Or maybe I only see some of the data. Am I even going to realize or know enough to know why I'm not seeing all the data? Is the query wrong? How else should I be changing it, right? Like all of these things are things that we are going to have to consider and think through and see, can we fix this? Are there ways around this? Can we at least identify when this has happened? And then the last one is like, how much is this going to cost, right? If you look at a lot of the other vendors, they have some sort of AI assistant, AI co-pilot, but they all charge for it because guess what? It is not free to do. It can start racking up the bill pretty quickly. If people are using it a lot and you're querying the LLM often, the costs start to add up.
I know Chris, this is comparing apples and oranges, but you and I were looking at some of the some of Google's new ability to like generate video and some of this. And I mean, we saw some people single queries were costing multiple dollars depending what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
I don't think that's quite a fair comparison to something like Claude or Gemini. It's not going to be that much, but it's an interesting thing of where folks have said, I would like these. But now what if it means it's like substantial? Because you could imagine on our end, it's a pass-through cost, right? Are we going to write our own LLM for some of this stuff? Maybe in some cases where it's really tailored. But a lot of folks, especially when you just tie into some of these best standards that are truly getting kept up to date, you're usually paying somebody, whether it's OpenAI or Google or
Right.
whoever's behind the scenes, obviously Anthropic with Claude.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one. Do you want me to hit that poll? I know you
Yeah, let's
had
do
that.
let's do a poll. I was just curious for people. Do you use AI in your job? Like, is that a thing? We got a couple of options here for you. Yeah, I do it often.
You know what's funny,
Or
Chris? I showed you a lot of mine
rarely.
while people actually vote on what they're doing or what they're using. I played with Copilot quite a bit, at least the Microsoft
Yeah,
side of the house.
yeah,
I still find myself going back to like phone chat GPT, and it's because the things that I'm asking, like, they're silly. But like even right before when we got on this webinar, I just said, "Yo, I've asked my audience like, topics about weather and upcoming vacations in the past. Give me some ideas for some witty banter that we could use to kick this off in a casual way." Right? That's a good example of giving me a nice augmentation. I'm not looking for a direct result, but I'm looking for it. And some of the ideas, it was really terrible, but the combinations of like one was or a YouTube rabbit hole you got sucked into. And I thought, oh man, I've been sucked into some of that. And that's a good example of augmentation. So I'm super curious. Seems like some folks are saying, I can't see the final results of the poll yet. So we'll give that a little bit longer.
yeah. Yeah, I've used it a lot. Actually, I use one of the most common uses for me is I like to generate images with Midjourney. But what I have learned about myself is that I'm not super descriptive. So I have I'll type something into Midjourney based on what I think I want, and then it thinks something else, and I'm like, that's not what I wanted. What I have found is that if I go ask ChatGPT to generate a Midjourney prompt for the thing I'm wanting, it gives me a much better prompt. It has all kinds of description stuff in there. How should it look? What should the scene be like? And then I take that and put that into Midjourney, and then I get much better
Yo,
results.
dog,
So
I heard you liked AI. So
interesting.
you generated a prompt with your AI so you can,
Yeah,
generate an image with your AI.
yeah, exactly.
Ridiculous. But I
Okay,
do agree.
okay. Decent number of people using the AI. 63% said yes often, 28% said rarely, 6% said not yet, and only
I'm not
3% said
allowed.
they're not allowed. That's
Yeah, I
surprising. I
won't
thought more
lie.
people would
I'm a
say they're
rule
not allowed.
breaker. even as a company, we pay internally for Gemini, and I still find myself sneaking and using ChatGPT probably more on my phone. I am the what is it? The shadow IT, the shadow AI. At least we can admit it, right? That's the first step to correcting
Yep.
yourself. Oh
Yep.
my
Exactly.
gosh. All right,
All
dude.
right,
We are
cool.
flying through the time, by the way. These segments are pretty good. So, Chris, I wasn't joking. You received some mail, and I'm going to pretend to read some paper here and tell you this is, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure how the letter came in. It said, Yo, homies, what are y'all planning to do with AI? We got some sweet shiz coming out soon from Sam Alternate Man. I don't want to get sued, although this logo and everything's close enough. Maybe we will get a takedown. What do you think, dude? In all honesty, obviously you're doing
Yeah.
some crazy stuff with AI. In some places, we found solutions. AI is just terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so this is good. This is good. I like these kind of segments because we can just kind of, riff. Like we don't have to be like super formal. And so I'll say like we've been watching AI for a long time. We've been kind of interested in it. I've been pretty negative on AI for a long time from the standpoint of how to apply it to security. And this is always the challenge for us. And when I look at security and look at like why have we as hunters been successful where maybe some others haven't been as successful or have more false positives or are less consistent, right? Where they're more inconsistent. A lot of that comes from the way that we approach the problem, which is not let's collect a ton of data. And then we have too much data, nobody can look at it. And then, oh, we'll just hope that we can throw AI at it and hope that it figures out some patterns of what's good or bad or the other. That's an approach a lot of vendors have taken. That was silence, right? That was their whole thing. Hey, we are going to identify malware that no one's seen before because we're going to use AI and we'll train the machine learning models and they'll find all this stuff, even though no human's ever seen this pattern before. And that was a pretty wild thought and it worked pretty
I
well.
was gonna say against the binaries, the actual compiled
Yeah.
EXEs and stuff, it worked pretty freaking good. I think
Yeah.
Silence deserves a lot of credit for our bringing kind of ML at least into cybersecurity.
100%. The where it fell apart and the problem that they ran into was that at some point they were like, "Hey, cool, we're finding all these things, but we're missing a few things and we got a couple false positives. Let's add some more data and stuff so that we can get it better." And they'd add more data and they'd have fewer less false positives in one place, but more in another, and they'd catch more stuff here, but then they'd miss things over there, and it became very hard to tune this machine with a bunch of knobs where you didn't really understand how each knob affected the machine. And so they could never really get beyond a point where, um, they could catch everything. They got it to a point, and it was a lot of effort, a lot of research time, a lot of development for really diminishing returns. And ultimately, that hurt them because people didn't want all those false positives. They'd bought into this narrative of AI. It's going to solve all the stuff. And now you're telling me there's a bunch of false positives and I still got to go do work.
This literally reminds me of RSA, whatever, 3 weeks ago. Like every Waymo I saw, it's amazing. It's driving. It's also getting passed by all the other cars on the road because they're just annoyed shitless that it's like a 16-year-old kid driving the car, not like
Yeah.
an actual grown adult behaving in a crazy city traffic. So I feel you
Yeah.
on that one. Do you know what, Chris, for me, where it comes and where I think at Huntress, like the where we're actually probably going to apply this? I think there's two sets of words that one, if this was like the Drake meme, one of them I'm like, and the other one I'm like, you know, um, it's the probabilistic outputs. And what really grinds my gears is quit telling me some of these loose probabilistic LLM results, like even our own search is probably, if we kick off that sim search the way that we think we're going to do it, it's probably going to occasionally generate you a really crappy query that doesn't do what you want. That's just the way probabilistic output works. And it's great when that's augmenting you. But when I actually want deterministic outcomes, like I sleep easy at night because I know not just believe. I know I'm going to get a predictable outcome. And it's not just going to be
Yeah.
like, I got you some of the way there, and now you got to figure out the rest of the way there. Like, let's use
Right.
AI for breaking down complex things into many different steps. Let's augment the way we think. And I think that's how, at least of all the experimentation we're doing internally with AI, even the stuff from like many years ago to what the current version of this is, the thing that I will give you all commitment, like just from like founders to you all as an audience, is you're going to see us stay away from the marketing that presents probabilistic output and trying to sell you on outcomes. You're not going to see that from
Yep.
us. It's just that it's internally a cultural thing. Our CPO, Prakash, he's the old CPO at Freshworks that helped build them into a massive, company of consequence. And we all three just really agree with it's about delivering the right solution at the right time. And we know ultimately at the end of the day, you want our experience. So you won't see us massively pivot away from humans. You will see us better use augmentation. So, for instance, Chris is using right now some abilities to abstract many different complex database queries and many different disparate systems within Huntress's backend to enable our SOC to ask more simple questions and get answers. But we're going to do it in a way that we're very careful about cost. Because to be very frank, right now, I know I've used Waymo as one example. I still think we're in the early days of Uber. Well, remember where all those rides when they were displacing taxis were actually pretty affordable. And then one day the VC money fell out of it, and all of a sudden your Uber cost is now 2.5 times more. I think that there is some possibility that the compute changes and AI changes will actually get better. We'll get better at training models. I'm not ruling out the possibility that we're not still in a world where AI could actually still get more expensive, not less. I don't think we know there. So, at least from me to you all, like,
Yep.
I think there is the right time. And if I could give you any one analogy, just even from your own organization, don't forget, like, Apple has become a multiple trillion-dollar company, not because they are first movers. Almost always does Samsung beat them to an initial feature, but often Samsung's implementation of these features are kind of crap or
Yeah.
kind of mediocre, or
Yeah.
they're really good, and then Apple immediately catches up in a release, right? So I would just encourage you all, experiment the heck out of this stuff, play to wits end and be honest. And I'll give you that same commitment on our end. Like we are experimenting all over the place of where we can do it, but we are keeping your outcomes, and part of your outcomes is the financial cost in mind. And when we think that there's real gain, we're going to probably roll in that type of stuff, especially where the gain isn't going to have dramatic impact. So that's just a long way of saying we haven't figured out all the different financial models. We definitely haven't figured out all the tech models. But the one thing we are staying very realistic with is the hype cycle. We're going to leave that to other people who are overhyping what AI can do. Although we are internally in some places doing some like freezing of positions while we see how much AI can actually allow us to be able to do more. Really still not seeing AI replacing humans. We're seeing AI
Yeah.
enable humans that aren't using AI to replace those humans, but not vice versa. So anyways, I'll jump off that,
Yeah.
Chris, but I appreciate your mail section
Yeah.
here. Does that leave
Absolutely.
us with enough time? Because I
I
know
think so.
we had some of these, and we want to kick this off, by the way. If you have other stuff for the mailbag, if you've got questions, hit us up. Marketing@huntress.com. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you have.
Yeah.
We're going to take this somewhat serious. Obviously today was seeding it with a fake Sam Altman or Alterman or whatever we called him just a second ago. But the point that I'm getting at is please send us your questions.
Yeah,
Now, Chris, we
absolutely.
got to end
It'd
it.
be cool to answer things.
You've heard from a lot of people, like, no offense, I don't want to give marketers my email address. I was kind of a little bit salty that I learned today that you have to give an email address to come to Product Lab. Turns out Zoom needs an email address to send you reminders. Makes sense.
Mm.
But one of the things that we learned while we were trying to make our technology more accessible for people to try, Chris learned at Write a Boom that you had folks that just wanted to sometimes play with the product, but not necessarily go into a full trial. Or when they did, they wanted to see more data. Are you okay, Chris, if I turn a little bit
Yeah.
of this over to you? I know you've got a little bit of screenshot
Yeah,
action here, right?
absolutely.
And some fake stuff. But what do you want to go? Where do you want to go into straight screen sharing? What do you want to show in demo
Yeah,
time?
let's do some screen sharing. So this is the idea of this segment. We got a lot of feedback from last time. No, I guess 2 months ago, we showed the security awareness training, kind of went through, showed how like some of the new simulation stuff works. People really loved that. So we figured let's do more of that. So this will be one. So this is the Huntress dashboard. Notice this is my dashboard. You can see up here. And this would be just like if you logged into Huntress and you had your dashboard, right? But imagine you just started a trial and you're like, oh, this Huntress thing, I heard about it. It's really cool. You just started a trial, you showed up and everything is zero. Everything is empty because there's no data in your trial yet. You haven't deployed any endpoints. You haven't connected your Microsoft 365 tenants. You have no SIM data yet. You're just like, hey, I got this thing, but it's empty. Or imagine you're talking to a new client or somebody who's going to be coming in and purchasing Huntress from you. You want to be able to show them some stuff without, exposing all of your existing client data, right? They're like, "Hey, show me this thing. What would it that I would be buying?" You don't want to show them like, "Oh yeah, I got these four other clients with incidents," right? Like that's a probably not a thing that you want to do. So what we have added is up here in the right-hand corner, you can get this drop down, and you can see it's probably a little bit hard to see. Maybe the font's a little small, but it says Demo Sandbox, and so I can click the Demo Sandbox. And what I will transition over into is the Huntress demo account. Now, this is the account that we use internally whenever we do um, demos or sales engineers are talking to customers or something like that. And we fill it with data. And so there's constantly stuff in here. There's incidents that you can look at. There's agents. There's all kinds of stuff.
Even
And so
bug
the idea
testing,
here is
right,
like,
happens in here.
a lot of bug testing. We actually use this at Write a Boom. So one of the things I did at Write a Boom was teaching people how to use the SIM. And so I made it so that they could easily, with just an email address, connect in, see a bunch of data in the SIM. They didn't have to bring their own data. I didn't have to show them some real customer data. Like we had stuff. So you can come in here, you can try it out. Maybe you're just an EDR customer and you're like, hey, I've heard of SIM. It sounds really cool. I'd love to kind of like try it out before I buy it. Well, guess what? You can now. Jump over into the demo sandbox. You can see the data. You can click through it. You can see all the interesting stuff, right? We've got incidents in here. So you can come and you can see all the incidents. You can jump into them and see, hey, this one's got some remediations. Well, what is this report, right? And you can see it here just like you would have received it. You can see, in this case, there's no remaining footholds, but there are still 5 remediations. I can see all of that stuff. It's very cool. Um, and it kind of allows you to try before you buy or show other people or whatever. So this is the very first iteration of it where once you have a Huntress trial or an existing Huntress account, you can view the demo sandbox. Well, since I'm in the demo sandbox, it doesn't show up here anymore. The next iteration will allow people to just come to the Huntress website, put in their email address, and boom, be dropped into this so they can play around. And so it's a cool thing. It has many uses. So I'd be curious to, get feedback and see what people think. And I'd love to hear how you're using it maybe to help show new customers or try things for yourself.
All right. I love it. I love it. And again, there's some folks, Prakash warned if anybody wasn't following in chat or can't see the live Zoom chat, our CPO said, hey, this is a feature right now. We're currently A/B testing out there. Whether Chris just got lucky because you're Chris Biznit, you got the B version or not, you could obviously see it. And it sounds like they're going to be rolling that out fairly soon, default for everyone. Prakash, I know it says everyone has access to this, by the way, just that the prompts are only shown for half the sign up. So it sounds like maybe everybody can get in that menu and choose that option. We'll get you an answer here. That's part of it being like an actual live show, but it sounds like I am correct. Anybody can go to that menu, Chris said. Whether or
Yeah.
not you get prompted on the trial to do it is what we're A/B testing. So sounds
Oh,
darn
yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Chris, part of the big one that we
That's
always
it.
do. We obviously have hit some of the end of our show, right? We've hit a little bit of a wrap, but it can't be done without a great giveaway. I've already got somebody that I'm looking through. I want to double down again. Chris, if you missed any of the feedback, there's some good ones that people chimed in. Actually, some things about columns and things along those lines that I didn't even
Mm,
recall seeing inside Canny, the feedback system. But if any of
okay.
you have ideas, thoughts, it's not a joke. We actually like move on a lot of this stuff. Your input from today is going to shape how this product turns into. Please hit us up at feedback.huntress.com. Now, what are you doing, Chris? What type of giveaway do you got? Because we're right at the top of the time and it's perfect
Yeah,
time for a giveaway.
we got the nice Huntress branded Yeti mug, actual Yeti mug, not one of those off brands. And we got a Huntress t-shirt. So we usually pick two people based on just people who've been in chat, been participating, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to pick one, and I'll pick one, and then we'll send them some cool stuff.
Can I go easy? I mean, I saw Perry like lighting it up. Perry, have you ever won before? If you haven't won
I
before,
don't
man, you
I
were you
don't
were
think
wild
so.
today on just absolutely lighting it up. All right.
Yeah, I
So
don't think
Perry, if you
so.
just hit up swag at huntress.com, we will get you taken care of, homie.
Yep.
What about you, Chris? I took the easiest one and I've been saving this for about
I'm
10
gonna
minutes.
go with I think you pronounce the name Kevin Tetriult, Tetreault. So
All right.
if you hit up swag at hunters.com, we'll get your information and we'll get some stuff shipped out to you.
All right. Well, we got that. There was one question, Chris, that came in here. Neil earlier just asked, said, "Yo, um, will I be able to see the Mac OS antivirus management on the portal?" Talking about the X Protect. He said, "I saw like in feedback, the item says it's complete, but it still shows like incompatible on his portal." Um,
Hmm.
I don't recall. I don't think you have to do anything. Do we have a rollout bug there, maybe?
I
Neil,
don't
I'm
know. That's a
taking your
good question. We
screenshot
will get
down
with the
bottom
team.
line. We'll see if we can get back to you. If you've got it and you're still on the sucker, send a host and panelist, maybe an email or something like that, or you could hit up support directly. We can do it. But either way, we'll get back to you. I don't think that feature requires anything on your end. So we'll have to make sure that there isn't
Yeah.
some sort of like rollout. Some of these features are like just happening. So there is a chance that maybe only part of the partner base and customer base has it. Oh, all right. I see Neil says, look, been asking, but nothing back in a while. This is almost brand new. So we'll get you an answer, Neil, on what's doing with that rollout there.
Cool.
All right. All
All right. We
right.
made good time today, I think.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. It's been pretty dope. I am seeing some folks saying, hey, it might be a Mac level setting that you have to have it enabled. I think X Protect is on by default. I mean, maybe other security products turn it off like Defender. I'm just not strong enough on Mac to know, being a hardcore Windows guy or bust. And Chris, you're using Linux, so I think both of us are like the
Yeah.
world's worst people
Doesn't
for going
doesn't
live.
apply to me.
Mm. Either way, thank you, everybody. We'll be back next month with another episode. Thanks for keeping it lively. Chat was dope. And again, looking forward to your feedback in next month's product lab. See you then.